It's yours.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Fine Scale Show for this month, for July 11th. This week we have, of course, Johnny Reb with us directing, and we've got Miles, Hale, and Ralph Renzetti, and of course me. So we are missing Barry. He's going to be absent the Fine Scale Show for a number of months through the summer as he's attending other business and personal business. So it's going to be us for a little while. And this show, we thought we would do something a little different, break away from doing structures, partly because we always, all of us that have built this show for you, have always envisioned this show about fine scale modeling at large, anything that's high fidelity modeling. And that is not just structures. That is the natural thing to fall into a pattern of. We will get back to that. We have many things coming up in the future for us, including some styrene structures, some paper modeling of all sorts. Structures will always be a big part of this. This week, we're going to attack some scenery. I think that scenery, as much as weathering, as much as car details and grab irons and backdrops, they all apply to the high fidelity modeling or fine scale modeling philosophy. Last month rather, we spoke at some length about what each of our vision or our interpretation of what fine scale meant to us. This time we're going to take that a little step further and see how those visions of fine scale apply to different facets beyond just structures. So thank you so much for joining us this month on YouTube Model Builders Fine Scale Show for July 11th. And back to you, Johnny, for the promotionals.
Alrighty, welcome to the Fine Scale Build Show. Andy, I got an echo. But I want to say, go back to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. There you can check the schedules for all the shows, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the Saturday live show. Also, Thursday shows weekly. Tuesday and Wednesday shows are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And then the Thursday and the Saturday shows are at 9 o'clock Central and 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And while they're at the website, be sure to click on the e-magazine tab so you can sign up for email notification when the e-mag comes out. JD and his team do a great job of producing that e-magazine. And also, as everybody knows, we're in the summertime right now, and everybody's doing vacations and all. And even the e-mag team takes a vacation occasionally. So, and they are going to be on vacation here real soon, just a few days. So, JD wanted me to let everybody know that the e-mag will be a few days late coming out, but not to worry, it will be out. But it's just going to be about a week later than normal because of vacations with the family. Because if you don't keep the family happy, you won't be doing this. Also, like Andy had announced earlier, Barry just got married. He's got a new family. He's trying to get everybody settled in and rooms assigned and all that good stuff, I guess, at the Barry Hotel there. So he's going to be taking off the rest of the year. So unfortunately, we will not have the Barry workbench. He said hopefully by sometime first part of next year, he'll be able to start coming back in, maybe start out with a few cameo appearances. But right now, he just wants to spend time with the family, with the new family, get everybody situated and all. So we wish Barry good luck on that. And we'll be seeing him again next year, but he's going to take the rest of the year off. So with that said, and Andy's been running a little technical difficulty. That's the reason why we're a few minutes late getting started here, but well, we're getting it all straightened out now. Miles has been giving him some technical support on how to get things set up, so I'm going to turn the show back over to Andy before he shoots me.
Thank you, Johnny. This time I get to be the one getting tickled over this process, but So this is typically I've been working at my workbench. This time I wanted to get my hands dirty, literally, and get up on the layout and working. My layout is literally at eye level. Many people say the layouts are at eye level, at some level around here, which I think is an ideal working height. Multi-deck layouts are sub-compromise regardless, and with the quality of modeling that I endeavor for, I wanted that very front and center. So my layout is literally at eye level. To be able to do the work tonight, I had to put a platform up for me to work on, which meant cameras and tripods and distance. But I think we've worked through that. I want to show you a couple of the things that I have done that have reached my level of satisfaction. My layout is definitely in progress. I think all layouts always are, but mine for sure is at that point. But I have found some techniques and some materials that I like really well. Other people use those for different parts, and I'm going to introduce you to some of those tools or some of those materials as we talk to Ralph and Miles about some of the materials that they like to work with that may be unique as well. But I want to get it up so I can actually do some real work in that way. Briefly show you some of this material that I've been working with, and I've built some tiles up to work with. So I use a lot of the super tree material for a lot of things. So super trees, we'll paint one of those in a minute so I can show you a little bit of the technique I've got that I like real well for that. I use sagebrush. That's a pretty coarse piece prior to modified into a proper tree, and once you make a tree out of it, you get a tree that looks much like this. So it has a nice bark structure, etc. I don't want to focus as much on trees. I think you can dedicate an entire show to that. But I made myself up a few tiles, good use for white styrofoam, of a few of the cedar materials that I like to work with, including bits and pieces of super tree, pieces that make some of the small early growth trees, you know, some decent quality pieces that make bushes with some material together. I'm going to show you some of the things briefly that I do with that, as well as this material that I'm really fond of, and I think Miles may even know better than I do. This is a organic oregano, or a natural or a wild oregano, possibly. It comes in, well, a lot of guys actually group this stuff together and make trees out of this stuff by taping it up and making a tree with this material. It does do some pretty decent trees. You can do some really nice work with this if you'll tape some of these together. Take some Durham's water putty, works real well for me, or Elmer's wood filler or wood putty works pretty well to make a trunk, and you can carve some bark structure into that. Again, at some point, if we do a tree focused show, we may go into some of that detail. But I use a lot of these same parts that could be used to make trees. I use those in low growth scenery. In Appalachia or in deep mountain modeling of any sort, the undergrowth is absolutely critical. And especially for a layout such as mine that is at eye level, you are, I don't have anything necessarily against puffball trees, but I've stated this opinion a few times on shows. Puffball trees look great the way we used to build railroads, where you have the view out of an aircraft window, where you're looking down on the scenery or at some distance. Puffballs do a very good job of recreating the top of the tree surface material. However, on my layout, you're looking up through the forest floor, and we need to model that type of detailed scenery. I will show you a little section that I've done now, or that is in progress while we start working on the next new section that I'm working on tonight. This section here is along the river where it splits, and the bridge has collapsed into it. But I've got to build that bridge up. But you can see the coloration that I've used here, the tall grass material that's along the water's edge through there, and some small sagebrush and various types of material that gets this really highly detailed small growth or undergrowth material. I'm now working tonight on this section here where the river insets, and I'll show you as we're working on off this platform. Here, the river insets slightly into the layout. It does this all along the way. On my layout, much of your modeling on this shelf, or much of the aisleway on this shelf, is actually in the river. That's quite common amongst modelers to do that. And what we've got to do is get these banks as growth covered as they would have been naturally. So I'm going to use some materials, fill these out, show you how I get some of the coloration for that stuff. The idea is to dilute the seed so that you're looking through. Now, standing on the platform, you get this high view, but the normal view is down here low. So you're looking back through the trees to see the that little tree house back there, or to see the train go as it comes from the front edge of the layout, behind all my tools, comes around the bridge, out by the front edge of the layout, and then there's a turnout here close to you, and then it ducks back in behind this scenery, back behind these couple structures, and into the multi-track yard, 4-track yard. The important thing is to get this low growth scenery that's so. There are ways to do this with clump foliage. That used to be the common way to do that. I wanted something with more 3D, more vertical effect scenery. Static grass recreates that well for some tall grass structure. But some of these other things that you need, like this is, blackberry bush. Blackberry was quite common along the right-of-way in Appalachia, and I hadn't found a good way to recreate it. Here, all I'm doing is taking the scraps off of Super Tree. I literally use everything in the box of Super Trees, short of the box itself, and use some Super Tree material for the grow through, small growth, and then I use just scraps of this adhered down with spray adhesive, and then the very fine dark leaf flake to get that growth. It's the best technique I've personally found to get that particular effect that I'm going for. And I use all bits of natural material to recreate this, but the Super Tree material is just absolutely incredible. I'm sure you guys are using the Super Tree material as well, but it's really common in the hobby. What do you guys think about this low growth material? How are you guys approaching that? What have you done with it?
Got a comment before you go to.
Sure. What you got, Johnny?
Get my mic turned back on. Just another scale mauler, Mr. Ron. He's watching intently.
Hi, Rod.
He said, we need to buy Andy some shelving for under his layout. The layout's not a storage area, LOL.
Typically, I say one of the things that's great about a layout at eye level is I can't ever put anything up here. The only reason that anything is up on my layout tonight at all is the tools that I have laid out for the work we're going to do tonight. If you look all the way around my layout, there's not a tool anywhere on the layout. I've got the bridge setting in place because that's what I've been working on over the last few weeks, was getting the plan to plant that permanently and put the real bridge abutments in instead of the Dixie Cup brand bridge piers that I've been using on this bridge here. I want to get those bridges in permanently. The only things on the layout at all, period, are just the glue and tools that we're going to use tonight. At eye level, it's not very good for a storage shelf. So, well, sure. So what do you guys think? Ralph, Miles, what do you guys, how much have you guys approached undergrowth? I know, Ralph, you've done some stuff. Your vineyard is really quite impressive. It absolutely qualifies as fine scale or high fidelity scenery. That's beautiful, brother.
Here we go again. I'll get used to this one time. Yeah, it's not even finished yet. So one of the things that I did was just make wire frame trees with very thin wire, because I mean we're talking a grapevine, and it ended up I made them too long, which was great because when the next plant came in, they joined to each other, and I wonder if I have a photo handy. As far as tall grasses, I use a needle. I don't know whether you can see it, with the eye cut open. So what I end up doing, like if I had this wire, this would be my long grasses. I'd fold it. And in your case, you're using styrofoam, and you just plant it down. And when you take it back, it stays in place. So if you had a clump of grass or a half dozen fibers of the tall grass from Woodland Scenics or wherever you can get it, rayon fiber works, jute, string also works, and that's how I plant my tall grasses and so on. The rest is static grass, basically. We've discussed at great length using the fir mats, and they don't always work, but some people, they have great success with it.
This is that jute twine, or jute rope. This is really handy for a whole lot of purposes. I do a lot of undergrowth with that, especially if it's not at the immediate edge of the layout where I like that natural oregano. But I've used this stuff, cut this up and plant this just to the other side of the tracks, plant it onto the scenery, and then come back and paint some of the surfaces or some of the tops of those and hit them with some leaf flake to kind of give them some body. The jute rope is quite handy for a lot of things. I agree. I too use these needles. I've got a couple different sizes of these. This one's quite large. This one's quite large of a needle that I've used for plating. It even works through. My water at the moment is done with polyacrylics. Regular polyurethane would damage the foam without a pre-treatment, but the polyacrylic is foam safe. So I do that initially, and then I'll come back and put some resin over top of that once I have a completed structure. But I can plant the grass through the polyacrylic, and I'm going to do some of that tonight. And then I have a smaller one for the smaller strands of grass, and I plan on planting some of that today. Miles has got a good shot up. Tell us what we're looking at, Miles. What have you done for that undergrowth? That's beautiful.
Well, and it's a little bit of, well, it's a lot of Woodland Scenic stuff, of course. There are some natural plants in there. I used some sedum, that was gathered together to make some of the trees. But basically, it's, I kind of went the other way. I don't have very much natural in there. Almost everything is Woodland Scenics. My armatures for the trees, of course, stop bouncing around here. Armatures for the trees are a little more natural than they are Woodland Scenics. I don't think I have a Woodland Scenics tree in the whole thing. But this is sedum, a single shock. This is about 4 or 5 sedum shocks together in the center. Yeah, I'll take that back. This is the Woodland Scenics tree here. If I could do it without shaking it all too much, come around here and we'll come in a little bit. There's some natural growth down in there. This is the top of the sedum plant, a couple of different ones. And in here I have, I think these are actually the Bachman, now sold by, the Vietnamese company. I can't think of what it is. Vietnamese. What they?
MP Cedary, possibly?
What is it?
I think is it MP Cedary, like Mike Paul Cedary? I think they're Vietnamese.
No, it's the one out of Vietnam that Bachman was distributing for a while. MRC was distributing.
Yeah.
I can't think of their name right now.
Gene Master?
I'll think of it in a minute.
This is the Bachman Seedmaster material, which I put it in a different case that I could get to. This is their static or their coarse grass, like the Hecky wild grass material, but for Bachman Seedscapes. Incredibly inexpensive for what it is compared to Hecky or Doc. I would use some of it tonight. It's really good material.
And this this in here is just a straight Home Depot Christmas tree flocked. You know, pretty simple stuff. This, however, is the hobo scene from Lionel. It has a plastic base that's rolled down, but I just buried the entire base and seized over the top of it, and I think you can see the fires flickering. But I really liked the scene. I thought it was a really cool scene. It just needed a little help to make it a little bit more realistic. But that's my hobos hanging out down underneath everything, kind of. They're in the area where the trailer court and some of the lower priced housing, let's say, is.
So are you chopping this seam up? So I've got a lot of this material too. I've collected it out of the yard. Actually, I think you sent me some years ago too. I've got some. I've used it for creating canopy. So back in toward the back of the seeds, I've used it to help build the canopy and add some diversity to the forest canopy when you are looking more at the top of it. And even the bottom's not so bad. It's kind of the middle section where it doesn't have a lot of body, where you have to pull a few of them together. This is the coarse, unprepped, untreated, unpainted seeded material he's talking about. It's really common, naturally, pretty easy to get a hold of, and a lot of modelers have used this for a lot of years, and it's good stuff for obvious reasons.
Yeah. And if you break it up and reform it, you can really do a lot with it, because trees do really have that kind of leaf structure at the outer edges and more of a barren inside, because it's reaching for the sunlight. Wherever the sunlight is, which is on the outside edges, that's where it's going to be green.
Absolutely. I've had those same materials. I also, the needle technique, like Ralph was talking about, I've got a few of those. I'm going to work with some of that tonight. I use Woody's tall grass material, which I'm not sure, but feels like a rayon fabric, like the static grass is made out of as well. I use that same material, and I get really good results out of plating that with a needle, especially on. I'm not sure how I would do that with plaster. I'm sure you could just pop a little hole and shove it in there. With styrofoam, it's really easy to just hook this through the needle and shove some of this material down. We'll do some of that in just a moment. A few of the other things that I've got are some of the flowering bushes. They call it, I think they treat it like a shrubbery. This is a product from Knock. I'm pretty sure, no, I'm sorry. It's Silflor, miniature Silflor material. This is incredible. I cut this down quite low, so it's not nearly so tall. This is meant to be like a baby's breath, I think is what that is. But I cut it down and use it as a quite low material, and then still use the underneath growth of it, because it has a really nice small branch structure for a low growth evergreen style. And then I also use these laser cut. I think these are Walthers. I'm not positive. I think they're Walthers. A lot of people make these. They make these are laser cut paper, but they are, you know, they have a little flower head on it that has like an iris flower that has quite a bit of shape to it. You know, it really gives you that fine scale detail work, as well as some ferns. I've got some of these planted as well. They look a little funny by default. You've got to work those a little bit. But if you know, poking a hole and planting those down in the hole and then pulling the leaf material out a little bit, I've got some planted along the up off the water's edge. I've got some of those planted as well. We'll do some of those in a minute. But these little laser cut material. What do you think about using a cricket for those? You think you could cut that with a cricket?
I don't know. That's getting down pretty small. Laser might cut it, but I don't know.
I'd say that's what they're using, is that. And then they've also got these, you know, climate vines have been hard to produce forever. Johnny has a trick that I think he's done. I know some of the guys down in Georgia that he's introduced me to have used this same, or used the thread and ground foam or something material. These were kind of interesting if you kind of ball them up, and they make a climbing growth, and they're a laser cut material as well, and they make a pretty good looking. You know, they've got that finely laser cut detail It's real meticulous. And then Woodland Scenics has 5-leaf foliage. And this is pretty close to the it's pretty close to the super tree material. It's probably the same thing. So 5-leaf foliage. So I think it's just the same as the super tree material, but with some ground foam or clump foliage applied to it already out of the box. Really handy because you can just get a bag of it, rip pieces off, and plant that into the scenery. Because it has ground foam, I either use it where I want really fine leaf structure, or I use it slightly back in the scene where I want some of that leaf detail to have diminished due to sight distance.
Well, and you should mention too that it's almost really important on almost any part of the country that you're modeling that the variety is there, that you use all of those materials that you just talked about.
Yes, sir.
You know, not just one. And I certainly didn't use all Woodland Scenics on the scene that I had. You know, you don't want to stick with just all of everything. I use AMC, I use Scenery Express, I use Knock, all kinds of different materials. It's a great looking vineyard that started there.
Right. Yeah. The key is diversity, and whether we're talking about the low growth, detail-oriented scenery, or if we're talking about trees. I use the super tree material. I use the sagebrush with the super tree material on that for foreground trees. I use some of these trees that I got these off Miles. These are really nice trees as well. They have a really nice branch structure to them, a nice bark texture to them. These look really good for a well-manicured tree. I'm using one here on the edge of the layout that's in someone's front yard. So they're good for that application. But even for the background trees, I've got sagebrush trees. And I use a lot of super trees to produce canopy with various types of leaf flake. My favorite leaf flake is from a company in Canada called Selkirk Leaf. That they have 3 different sizes of leaf flake and a pretty wide diversity of color, and I really like their leaf flake. But I still add a lot of diversity. I use leaf flake from MP Scenery. I believe that's the company behind JTT that makes their products. I just order it with the MP Scenery title or tag on the bag. This tree is super tree material glued to a stick. That had a nice bark texture to it, but it let me get a bigger tree, but also more importantly, that really open material. So trees that you see in my front yard, for example, that are quite groomed and don't have other trees bunched right up against them, they are quite full. When you get out trees out along the edge of the main line like we have that on our railroad modeling, those trees are going to vary a lot. You'll have some very full trees. You'll have trees where just the top of it is full and the bottom of the tree is not. You'll have a lot of trees like this that are very airy or that can be seen through. So I use those. I use a really wide diversity of armatures as well as covering materials and leaf flake, and even use some ground foam along the back edge to diminish the detail. So as you look into the scene at the foreground, I use a very large leaf flake, and I use a few different sizes because not all leaves are the same size. But as you right against the backdrop, many of those are ground foam, sometimes with, sometimes without the finest of leaf flake put on top of that.
Yeah, JTT was the company I was trying to think of that I got some of the branch bunches from. They're the little tiny growths that are just the saplings just starting. And I use a lot of those as underbrush.
Oh, that's right. I seen you do a video on those, and they're a little wire, just a little twist with a couple little sprigs of a wire off of them. But
that's like 100 of them for $10 from JTT. I mean, it's a great buy.
You
and
can't
it's also great. If you're modeling out in the West, or Midwest, and you're doing any kind of farm modeling, that row of trees that exists between fields, those little saplings are great right along in that fence row, that division between your pastures.
Absolutely. You'd see that along the edge of the right of way too. I do that a lot on mine. Especially in 1950, when the EPA was not around, they used cinder to keep down the side of the right-of-way growth. They didn't have these big ballast profiles. I think we were talking about this last night or recently. In modern modeling, you'll see ballast profiles that are 3-4 feet tall. You know, drainage is king. But in 1950, even some of the heaviest traveled main lines would be, say they got a foot of ballast, and they would have cinder poured along the edge because they had cinder in mass. So I've done that on mine as well. I've got cinder there, but as soon as you get outside of that cinder, the growth, they didn't have, any of these sprays that kept that growth down. So the growth, as soon as you step back from the right of way, is fairly deep, dense.
Right.
So,
okay.
So I want to play at some of these, show you how to use this needle trick. I don't know. Oh yeah, this vineyard Ralph's done is incredible. Why don't you tell us about what you're working with, Ralph? That thing's beautiful. Well,
okay. Let me just stop sharing this for a minute so I can show you. So I started with a wire frame. I took an electrical cord and I got the real fine wires out, and I soldered where my fingers are to hold it together and twisted the rest of it. I then coated it with a latex caulking to give it some sort of bark. And then I painted it with the my favorite product, Rust-Oleum Camo, dark brown. And then I used a liquid glue. I dipped the frame into the glue and then into some leaf fiber. And I made these frames to plant. So we then go up to the picture. That's the way it ended up. I'm using Easy Line for the fencing. It's a 3/16 of an inch posts with the wire frame to hold up the vines. Oops, gone the wrong way. So as I moved between, this is on the bridge behind me where I'm sitting now, and it's a pull-out bridge that goes to my cold cellar. So there's what I started with. There's a bunch of pins in there. They were my placeholders so that every time I put a tree in, the T-pin would come out. And you can see there I started to put the wire in, the Easy Line. Just fastened it with crazy glue to the tops of the posts. And then white glue to hold the plants in the ground. And that's basically it for the vineyard. But then you got talking about trees. I don't know whether you can see these very well, maybe in front of my shirt. They're all made with chopsticks.
Beautiful.
This one here, a whole bunch of different holes put in it, and Caspia. Caspia is a product that people who do flower arrangements, dry flower arrangements, they have it's almost like baby's breath. And then you lightly dust it with ground foam. These two are furnace filter on the chopstick. And just put it on randomly, glue it in place, paint it, and you're done.
I've found the conifers to be. I've made one of those also with the Caspia fern or asparagus fern wood. Drilled a bunch of holes. It just took me hours to make those. But for a foreground conifer, I can't imagine another technique. I've seen some of Miles's conifers also that are, what are those, Miles, 30 inches tall probably?
Oh, between 3 and 4 feet.
I knew that they were.
And that's for what scale, Miles?
O scale.
O scale. Okay, so I'm HO, And this is what I'm using to do my tall pines in my mountain area.
Yeah,
That's an old broom handle, broom handle that I shaved down.
That's what you've got. Most people don't understand. You know, 150-foot tree, between 100 and 150-foot tree, is an East Coast pine. Well, that's got to be a foot to a foot and a half in HO scale. That's not a little 6-inch tree.
That's right.
Yeah, I think we've taken selective compression too far in many aspects of our hobby, and you have to do some of it. Selective compression is absolutely critical, but I think we've overdone it to where many of the trees that we're used to seeing on our railroads are glorified bush. And, you know, I've done this, you know, my trees are 13, 14 inches tall for the conifers and for the deciduous trees. And some of the conifers should be poking up through those by another couple inches.
Yeah, but historically, Andy, the industry has guided the model railroaders to, here's a product for your trees.
Yep.
And they never really sized them properly. So when you go to somebody's layout, the trees don't look the right scale. It should dwarf a house.
Yes.
That's right.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to do here. These houses are, you know, 2-story houses, both of these. And even this small tree in the yard is still up over that house, not hardly twice as tall. But this tree that I've got that tree house in, that tree is around a foot tall. That house at maybe 3 inches. So it's, you know, it's way up here above the height of that house.
Yeah,
that's the effect.
Which is where,
and especially if your layout's up at eye level or at a pretty high height, when you're looking into that seed, just like in the real world, when you're standing in a yard looking at a house, those trees should be massively shadowing everything.
Look at the tree behind Miles.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a 3-foot plus tree, but you stop and think at 50 feet per foot in HO scale, approximately 48, this is only about 150, 200-foot tree.
Sure.
So for a West Coast pine, this is really kind of a baby. But it's
small, yeah.
Above me by my full length. And to Ralph's comment a second ago, I'll move over here. I'm sorry about jiggling around with the camera. I don't like to do that. Normally with switch. But
sorry, we'll let you do it this time.
See here, this tree is one similar to what I sent to Andy, but I've added a trunk to it. But look how much taller it is than the house. It dwarfs the house, as Ralph was saying. You know, a mature tree in a mature neighborhood should be dwarfing that house. Same way with my, oops, got my microphone caught. Same way with my shack here. My trees dwarf the trailer and the shack house, and that's the way it should be. The trees are big. But yes, wooden sinks, I mean, they're guilty of it. Walters is guilty of it. Bachman, there hasn't been a manufacturer pretty much across the board for the last 50 years that has made scale-sized trees.
Miles.
Yes.
My mic's hot. Dwight, earlier, he was asking, is that trailer for rent?
Yes, it is. We sing that song every time we come in the door. The lights on, the TV's on, and they're having a good time.
Yeah. Can you turn your volume down just a skosh?
Mine?
Yes.
How's that? Better?
Yeah, that's doing good.
Okay.
Yeah, real quick while I got it, Stu Structures just a little bit ago said when we were talking about undergrowth that several different mosses work well for the lower growth stuff. So
yes, I've got so reindeer moss, commonly called lichen. You know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago plus, when I was coming up in the hobby, lichen was a very common scenery material used, and I think it got so overused that it got kind of a bad reputation. But lichen serves a purpose. It has a branch structure to it that is not unuseful. Overusing anything would probably or trying to use lichen for everything would diminish its value. But I use lichen especially some for the far background bush structure, because the branches are a little too fat. They're not as fine as some of the branch structure that I get from the small bits and scraps and pieces of the super tree. But for a slightly background bush, they make a really good thick, like a rhododendron bush. That's really important if you're modeling Appalachias, to be able to model rhododendron or laurel bushes. And lichen does about as good a job as anything I know of. Short of buying the Pollack bushes from Germany, and you're going to pay about $20 for 3 or 4 of those. It's that thing Ralph's talking about, the camouflage. Everybody's so popular. I spray my trees with this stuff.
Steve Structures, he said lichen is okay, but I know I'll mispronounce this. Otter, O-T-Y-E-R, mosses, or better, he thinks. You can use mats of the low stuff for fair size areas.
Oh, I'll try to look for some of that for that particular moss. I've got some of the natural moss I've collected. I use some a little bit. It makes some vines or something. Actually, Rod Perry done some stuff on his channel that was really impressive for some growth up the side of a house, and used some inks to stain and color those, and then flocked them, and they look great for that. Whatever that vine, crawling vine is that covers the side of houses, quite common in the New England states.
Yeah, they got you can buy it at Hobby Lobby, a few other craft stores. It's called Plant Topper. It's kind of like a moss that you put on top of your potted plants just to hide the dirt and stuff. But we were talking about that one time. Miles said try grinding it to see what it does.
Yeah, that worked. Miles was telling me about doing that. I was using the plant toppers. They somewhat look like static grass, but they have a really bright and almost shiny consistency to them. They're great for long wet areas. I've done that. This is plant topper here. In this area, this is the plant topper material. This grass material here is, and it looks great for this area right along this where this stream bed would be. And then I've also taken some of that material that you're talking about and ground that up and made the cut. So I use natural leaves for my foreground cover, or natural dirt, real leaves, real dirt, ground up and sifted. But for the background, I've used some of that, like what you're talking about here. Again, is that plant topper chopped up for that, for that background, top of the mountain kind of area where I'm, looking up through the growth, and it gives some texture, and it's dirt cheap, $3 or $4 will buy you a big bag of it. And I ground it up. I ground up less than half of it. It filled a big old quart mason jar. So.
Yeah, you guys were talking about vines before. There's something that I've been using that every time I mention it to somebody that comes into the store, they go, "Are you serious?" This stuff here, Woodland Scenics foliage. You get it in different colors.
Is that like the
and you pull it apart, and it's got a poly fiber in it. So when you pull it apart, it does this sort of thing here. And you get the long vines with a little bit of foliage on it. And you can put it up the sides of buildings and down the sides of rocks and so on.
So it's like a polyfill with some ground foam within it.
Yes.
Yeah, I use the polyfill for a lot of stuff. I make kudzu. That was, taking over the world, especially in 1950, and even still to this day. Anywhere where you see kudzu, it has just taken over. So I made kudzu by stretching out polyfill into these little flat things, spraying it with the camouflage dark color, and then putting spray glue and packing it with leaf flake, and then using a couple different colors of spray misted at a distance to get that. Let's see if I can shoot this from here. It's a little bit back, but there's that kudzu. Sure, go for it.
There, I just ripped some out, and it's this real fine fiber, and you can just keep stretching it and string it out, put a little touch of glue in place, and it looks great.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
Like I've got a big clump here, but you can really string it out, and then if you have to, you can add a little bit more of the ground foam on top of it. But I mean, it really. So if that was sitting in the ground and it goes up the wall.
It's one of the real early products, and it still looks great. And people forget about it because it's been around for 40 years or whatever.
Yep,
it works. Yep. But I love the polyfill. You know, it's another one of those things that people have seen a single task for. You know, for taking a branch armature or a tree armature and stretching it across it to make the fine branch structure. It's fine for doing that task, but it's so useful for a whole lot of other things.
It shows that on the back of the bag here, but I've seen guys use aquarium filters, the filter floss.
Yep.
And you string it out very lightly and add a little bit of ground foam, and it just makes the tree much more fuller and still be light and airy.
Right.
So I don't know whether you can see my other screen. It's dark right now. Let's put the light on. Come on. Okay. And what was that, John? Okay. In the corner of my layout here, I have 2 tracks plus a gauntlet track. The gauntlet track is 26 feet, and this heads into my helix here. I have the bridge that comes across with a big arched bridge, and this is what the corner where my town is going to go. And I've been waiting for this gator board. Gator board is fiber on either side with foam inside, foam core. Because of its construction, you can add stuff on this, and there's no deflection in it, noticeable deflection. So that's my theory. I want to put the buildings on, and I have these holes in the top so that I can get at any of the track if I have a derailment. But I want to be able to do it by lifting the town or whatever panel. So these go into place. And then, Andy, I think you and I talked about this once before. I used some plaster molds to make up. Oh yeah, this is the other thing. I did this originally just with foam core, and I don't think this is going to take the weight. So I will remove the styrofoam pieces that I built and put them over there. My idea is to try and make a forced perspective in my town. So the front buildings will be full size. The next building in behind will be a slightly smaller scale. And same all the way around, basically. And what I've done is I have some plaster molds that I do my road work, my brick work, and so on. I don't know whether you can see this bridge abutment here. That's done with a Sterling Models mold. That's the mold, and that's what comes out of it. And that's what I've done my stonework there and around my harbor. And I had one of these, an arcade wall. It's plastic, but I only had one and I wanted more than one. So I made another mold. And what I ended up doing with that is I made these plaster pieces from it. So again, plaster Paris. So that's going to be my wall, retaining wall sort of thing. Once it's in place, it's going to be glued in. It's not going to be loose like it is now. That's what my town's going to look like, or the groundwork. I still haven't worked out the details for doing the buildings, but that's to come. I don't know whether you can see, I've got a wooden walk, or what do they call it, a boardwalk around the side of my harbor. This one has rails in it. So I can actually bring a train out into here. But that's what I've been working on. And I just got the gator board the other day. So now I can get moving on it. And then, let's see, I can put my bridge in place, I think. It's a brute of a bridge.
I mean, building these things as separate dioramas, I mean, so much of this. I mean, this little platform here that these houses are setting on, this is a separate, this entire little circle here is a separate, all of this is part of the layout, but there's a little oblong section here that has the two houses, the yards and stuff like that. That's a piece of a diorama. The structure we built on the first two shows of the fine scale, about that on a small diorama base. So the structure's removable. These are removable and have a little square frame under them that they set down over top of, and a cavity underneath. So I could hide my Arduino and my electronics under them and a little frame around them, so they sit on. But then this whole piece here is also a separate diorama that can be removed. So I could, you know, when I built this and put the mat on it, and, you know, this is a grass mat that then I've, you know, I take a pair of shears to and carve and cut at it to give some irregularity. It's not very expensive to buy those mats. I mean, that's a $8 or $10 mat probably, and it's pretty good results, especially if it's a little too regular. So take a pair of nippers or side cut pliers and just kind of, you know, do some yard work.
Looks good.
Oh, looks good, Miles. That's that seed that you did for Baltimore Road University or possibly Trade Masters, where you did that seed?
Trade Masters, yeah. I'm going to have to bug out here a little bit because we got to get up at 3 in the morning, but I want to real quick. You wanted to talk a little bit about some of the photographic stuff that I've been doing. That's the photographic backgrounds I've been working on in Photoshop, and I found a printer here in Kansas City that prints these buildings on Centra. It's essentially PVC sheet, and it's printed with UV ink, so the inks are color fast. But at any rate, what I want to do, these really look real, and I've had a lot of model builders that have looked at my pictures and say, well, those are three-dimensional buildings. Well, no, they're not. They're actually flat photographs, but they really do look kind of three-dimensional. But I was sitting here staring at the one that you just talked about, this trailer scene, thinking, well, yeah, all I've been thinking about are tall, big buildings, and really what I need to do now is take the camera and shoot a picture of a trailer court and put the trailer court back in behind my shack and my trailer, and then maybe extend those trees across, and I'll have a nice looking scene for my trailer court. That one looks kind of isolated sitting there, but if there was a photograph behind that that really kind of played into the trailer park scene, it might really add to it and make it look a whole lot better. And anyway, just food for thought. The other thing we thought about is it's not enough to just work on the buildings like this. I'm going to start to get up maybe in a hotel or someplace and shoot down on a street and actually shoot a street, because you could print the street with all its cracks and crevices and manholes and whatever, shoot the sidewalk the same way. John Lawrence, my best friend down in San Antonio, suggested shooting rooftops, because you've got all that detail of the air conditioners and platforms and piping and everything else on top of the roof. And you could actually put the roof on a building and it would look much better. It's hard to match Mother Nature's weathering. And of course, these buildings are all real. They're out in the weather. They're all naturally weathered. The other thing then is to come back into these buildings, and I have not done this yet, but I want to. And wherever we have cornice or trim between floors or whatever, add a few pieces of that are three-dimensional, and you're going to add a great deal of interest to those buildings. At any rate, my 2 cents on it.
That was more than 2 cents, and it was well worth it.
Absolutely.
And the other thing we talked about in the hangout last night, and I should mention it again, Ralph and I think are in 100% agreement on this. I went to a clinic back east. I think it was the convention in Toronto, actually, where the SARS thing was supposed to be, which was a bunch of, bunk. The SARS thing never did materialize, but they had great clinics there. The NMRA kind of backed out of sponsoring them, and the local group there had to do their own thing, and they did an absolutely phenomenal job. One of the clinics they did was called Model What You Know. And once you hear the title, you don't really maybe necessarily have to hear the rest of the clinic. It's kind of self-explanatory. But this guy was talking about, modeling the town that you grew up in, or, whatever, so your memories and your kind of things kind of flow.
Yeah.
But my thing is, you need to go back to the books and look things up, or you need to travel there and take some photographs and actually model from the photographs, because that's Mother Nature, that's real, that's what we're trying more or less to simulate. And
exactly.
If you've got that example there to go by, what a much better model you're probably going to make when you're trying to match Mother Nature directly off that photograph.
That's exactly what I do, Miles. When I do my weathering, I don't work from my mind. I use a prototype photograph.
Yeah, it's just, it makes you see, I mean, first of all, the photograph, they always say, shows your mistakes on your models, because you can focus in and you can look at it, it's frozen, you can really analyze it. But the same thing then is true when you have a photograph of Mother Nature. You can sit there and you can look at it and you can analyze and you can see what she's doing. And it's just so much better to have that graphic in front of you to go by, that goal to try and match. Anyway, I'm sorry I got to get up so early in the morning, but I'm headed up to Canada to shoot some of the episodes for Tree Masters, and I got to be up at about 3 in the morning. So I'm going to back out and leave you guys for tonight. But great show so far. Great ideas.
Miles, if I can make it up to George's, I'll see you there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll probably be there. I'm going to guess about 2, 3, something like that.
Okay.
By the time we do lunch and get out and whatever.
Right.
Everybody have fun modeling. Let your trains put a smile on your face.
Yeah, thank you, Miles. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
And I've planted all these little small bushes. I mean, this is not fast work to plant these. It's time consuming. And I haven't found a method that gives me as good a results as I'm not as happy with any results other than just planting them individually like this. It's time consuming, but planting these individual plants gives you this, that I can plant all these diversity or variety of these bushes to get this small growth effect that you get of these small bushes underneath. So I'll plant a few big ones and then start working my way around with this small growth. But I definitely back the modeling from a photograph, regardless of what you're modeling, whether it's in scenery or or anything. But your idea, what you have in your mind about what a tree looks like, may very well not be that accurate. I mean, in your mind, what you're seeing for a tree, they all look like this tree. They're all perfectly shaped, and some trees do look like that. But many of your trees look, look like this, or are scraggly like this tree, back here that I haven't started working on too much yet. So, modeling off of photos, whether you're talking about weathering or a structure or rooftop details, concrete, I mean, even down to bushes and trees, photos are key. This grass technique, like what Ralph was talking about too, using the needle, that's the trick for doing this. And I'll show you how I plant some of that stuff. That's the best technique I found for doing it. I've done this grass a couple different ways. Some of this is along the front that I'll show you with the blackberry bushes. I planted that using Joey Ricard's method. So spray adhesive or some really tacky adhesive, cutting it up, rolling it up like a cigar or a Play-Doh snake or something, and tacking into that glue and pulling away from it so that you get that grass standing upright. Of course, you get those same effects with static grass, or at least much like those same effects with static grass, but not identical. And getting this really tall grass is quite difficult. And I don't know how you can plant static grass in bushes or in clumps in the water surface like you can. I mean, you can't use static grass for that. You have to plant them this way. So, but take the needle surface. This is a fairly large one, but actually I probably have to use a small one for that. Just got to hook that grass. And I would say the foam would probably hold it its own, but I use adhesive. I use some kind of glue. I use Mod Podge. I use Mod Podge for most everything. I've been using the Eileen. For the bigger stuff, I use the Eileen's.
Tacky glue.
Then all you got to do is shove it straight down into the, straight down in. Also a neat effect. I don't know if I can show this. Let's try this. You can take that needle once you've got that needle in there, and you can twist it or spin that needle, and it will spread the grass out in different ways. There's a lot of glue coming out of that. I put too much on there. But you can see this grass here around that bushing out. But if you spin that needle, it'll spread out like that. If I can see that or not. But it'll spread out. So you can make different types where you could do the cattails that are more vertical, or you could spin it to force them to grow, to spread out, and then just pull the needle away. And use less glue than I just used.
I usually put the glue in the spot where I want to put it. And in my case, I'm using, my layout is hard shell. So I have to drill a hole.
Sure.
Or I have to poke it with a needle prior to planting the bush or the grasses. So I just put a dab of glue right on the hole and push it down through.
Yeah, otherwise it's probably the same, basically the same otherwise.
Yep.
I really like working with foam. I mean, like I said to other people talking about, hey guys, this is my first layout ever using foam. I always use plaster. I'm not against plaster at all, but I fell in love with doing it, using the foam. It's not for everybody. There's people who absolutely hate it, but I love it. And
he's not showing you what he's supporting it with. He's got a couple of tripods holding up some parts.
all this is on brackets. All this is on brackets now.
That's on brackets. Yes, it is. I had to get that in there.
Yeah. Ralph's been giving me a hard time for a long time about this. So, but in my defense, I've always built layouts that are at this height or lower. There's a lot of information and a lot of layouts that you could visit or see that are at this height. This is a good, comfortable height to work with. I'm not so sure that this is not the best height, but I wanted a multi-deck layout, which means I needed to get it as high as possible. And I really wanted to try this literally at eye level up here height, and I was nervous about it. So instead of mounting everything to the wall, then I had to change it. I did use some creative support methodologies.
But it's only temporary.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And now everything I've got is permanently affixed with brackets.
Read it.
So I plant this. So I plant the grass, the seed. Then I've been planting these smaller ones of all different sorts. They make up some of these small trees. I make up a few more of those too. Only thing I do to them, I use the same paint. I think the vast majority of us use that. Use these Rust-Oleum camo color paints. They're just, I can't imagine anything that can be much of an improvement on those. The only thing I do though is I'll use different colors, because trees are different colors. You know, there's trees that are gray or white or whitewashed. This tree was made with a sagebrush base, but I used a wash of white oil paint because it soaks in real well, so that I could bleach that out like a beech tree. So it has a white bark structure. I'll darken some of them up like a black oak or something, and I'll use an oil paint so that it penetrates to get that effect. What I'm doing for these is spraying them with a camo, and then I'll do a light overspray. Sometimes a gray, that's not uncommon. And they're sandy colors. They've got two different sand colors, a sand and a beige or a buff or something. But to give them some variety, otherwise they're a little too dark. So if you hit them from a distance a little bit, you'll pull out some. You know, you got to remember, you got to paint in the light effects, and that's true for structures or for your weathering as much as it is for scenery. That you've got to paint in the effects that Mother Nature has, from light to water to shadows even. Charles Kirk, just an incredible modeler and a professional artist, and he paints in the shadows on his scenery. So I'll spray that. We'll give that just a second, and then I'll put some glue on it.
But he also does his structures similar to what Miles has done on printed paper. His brickwork is superb, but he plays with it in Photoshop before he prints it. So he has a little bit more shadow. And when you see it, I mean, you could be 1.5 feet, 2 feet away from it, and it still looks like it's full brick. You have to really get up close to see. It's just a flat surface. Well, I have some pictures of it. Oops, wrong one. Stop sharing.
And then I use all kinds of different glues for this stuff too. Super 77 is real common, but it has kind of a fuzzy look. But this eye stuff is great. But I use the regular eye too with a stick most of the time. That's what I plant this stuff with. But the eye spray is incredible. Where's that at?
That is the corner that I was showing before I put the plywood on the top. So that's the 2 rails plus the gauntlet track on the outside or on the top. And that's how it ended up, with the plywood over the top.
Huh. What's your plans back there? I know you were talking about some sort of a city scene, but is it city or is it going to be, what kind of scene are you doing? Streets and structures?
Streets and structures, from big buildings to small buildings to maybe even using mirrors to have other buildings on the back of buildings to look like they're further away in the mirror.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Oops. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So there's that bridge. And it's a European style bridge. It's meant for a double track. And what I did to make it look more North American is I put a plate girder, single rail on top of it. It's a kit. I'm not saying I couldn't do it. It would take me an awful long time to do it. Like Andy, if you tell me I can't do it, guess what? I'm going to take the challenge and I'm going to go with it.
Absolutely. Every time.
So when that bridge meets up with this other one, I needed a bridge abutment or pier to support the two of them. And what I ended up doing was building it with that plaster that I showed you, the stonework. So inside is a wooden piece that supports the bridge. The plaster basically is just a facade. And then with the bridge on it, and even this concrete down here is a Sterling Models mold as well. And that's the other side of it. So that was colored just with some brush washing water. You paint and you clean off your brush in the water, and you get all that crap and color in the water from cleaning your brushes. I just went over the plaster of Paris with it, and that's what I got. So there's the other partially finished, slightly painted with all my tunnel portals and so on. And from this platform to the right is going to be a, oh, what do they call it? It's a truss bridge with rods, the threaded rods. A Hale truss bridge.
Oh, yeah.
That's my work area, my harbor. What was it Dwight was saying before? Or no, Ron was saying, you got to have a place to store things. Well, at some point you get to the point where your workbench has been filled in by track work or some sort of scenery, and you don't have a work area anymore. So the open areas become work areas. Oh yeah, there we go. So there's a better shot of it in place with color. You can see the harbor walls as well. Some of the buildings are in the back. They're not the ones that are going to stay there, but some of them are in the back. My boat launching rail. And I needed the arch bridge like this because I have a tugboat that's going to be moored in this harbor. And I needed the elevation. So I paid through the nose for that bridge. But again, with plaster of Paris and some molds, whatever, you can do wonders. What I tend to do is I'll take a mold and I'll cut it up into pieces where I need it. So I have a rock mold, and the bottom section from that line down is the mold. That's a piece of it that I've cut fill. This here is actually a slope, so I'm going to put Sculptamold up to that brickwork, and all this is going to be grass work. But all the panels, all of this is cut and fit to pieces, and I fill the lines with plaster of Paris or drywall mud, and then sculpt it out with a knife or even a pin, or I use a number 11 blade as well, just to carve out the bricks so you don't see the the joint that I make.
Well, this stuff does take a little while to play with this stuff. I want to show this overall technique. You know, if you guys are interested in some of the senior stuff, I know, you know, we're going to be doing, you know, we'll get back to structures right away. I just kind of wanted to break away from doing structures for a moment. I love building structures. Absolutely. I can see the appeal of just being a structure modeler, like a lot of people are, building dioramas and structures. I can see that appeal, but that's not the modeler I am. I like building layouts, and that includes all facets of the hobby. That's the part I like about it. It's all that diversity.
I find scratch building's the best.
Oh yes, absolutely. Whatever's in your mind's eye. I
Or
like
if you have
structures, but there's nothing like building something out of your own imagination.
Well, this is not out of my imagination. This was from a set of plans. Mispillion Lighthouse. I'm not exactly sure where that is in the U.S., but that was scratch built with styrene.
Oh, absolutely. Are you going to put a circuit in that to light that up?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, come on. There's what the top looks like finished.
Oh yeah.
With cedar shingles. Before it was just printed paper. And where's the video? There's a video of the light going on and off somewhere. I guess it's not here. We talked about forced perspective. I'm going to go back just a bit here. Inside my helix, because the helix is basically at my chin level, I can see down inside into the center of it. So I took, this was a Tyco bridge, single rail bridge. I painted it a little bit different, and I made these cardboard scenery pieces that I can remove from the inside of the helix. And I made this tunnel I made it into a roadbed for end scale trucks and cars.
Huh.
So just putting the cars on it made it look that much further away.
Absolutely. Well, the human eye knows what a car should be roughly in size. So.
Yep. And there's no special rock work on this. All I did was the plaster cloth over cardboard webbing, and then Sculpt-A-Mold. And I put the Sculpt-A-Mold on with a knife and sort of rounded off the corners with my hands and came back and painted it. And to me, it looks like rock.
There's no argument. That worked, brother.
I mean, there was a few pieces of styrofoam in there to do the bridge abutments and so on, but basically it was all cardboard formwork.
I don't have anything against that. I've done the landing strips. I don't do that today. That's not the way I choose to model today. But there's, you know, honestly, however you get a structure, it doesn't matter. However you get a structure. If you prefer plaster, I mean, even screen wire, as antiquated as that technique is, up this valley, actually, let me show you that. I did this with a technique that I've seen, I can't think of his name right this second. He used that tall wall to the left not the plant, not the sheetrock wall. That tall wall to the left is made with quilt matting, stretched over styrofoam rims, and that made you know, and then you know, coated with some scenery glue, and that gives me this view. You know, at eye level here, when you turn and look back, you're looking some 6 feet back up that valley, and that's, you know, on a 2 foot wide shelf. That's the only way you get the, you know, you get those big deep views. So, however you get the structure, most of these same techniques apply. I mean, granted, with plaster, back when I used plaster, it was largely ground foam and stuff, so everything's surface adhered. You know, so you have to poke a few holes, you know, with a, you know, pin vise or something.
Exactly.
So, and we'll get back to structures. You know, to all of you guys watching, you know, we appreciate feedback. You know, the thing we really wanted to show here tonight, mostly, or a big part of that, was, you know, fine scale modeling is absolutely every part of your modeling. From scenery to weathering to mounted grab irons, it's all the same stuff. The only thing that we hope to focus on in this show is the highest fidelity that we can achieve, and that's what we try for. In this, you know, tonight I wanted to talk a lot about, you know, how to take those techniques and use some fine materials to get, you know, meticulous scenery materials, but. You know, we're looking for feedback for, you know, for things you guys want to see. Is scenery, you know, these, you know, various techniques for scenery critically important? Is, you know, is that something you guys would be interested in seeing more of? You know, if you'd like to see a show on trees at some point in the future, on wire trees, a lot of people do those. Famously, I'll think of his name right after the show ends, but the guy who literally wrote the book on it, a British modeler, uses wire materials. Trevor Marshall, if you look up his YouTube channel, he's done some great showcasing of doing wire trees. And our own Philip Wyman has done some wire trees. I haven't completed mine yet. All I've got is the bark structure added to it with clay, to a wire tree that Phil formed for me. A beautiful tree. Thank you, Phil. I need to finish this up and paint this. So
I have 4 videos on my Facebook page of making bottle brush trees for coniferous trees.
I've got some of those in the background too. Especially
the guy is from Australia. His name's Steve Pettit.
Oh yeah, I have to look him up. Okay. I mean, for background conifers, I can't see a better way than using bottle brush. I mean, in the foreground, I get these, you know, the Caspia fern material. I've got one of those I've made so far, just one. That's the way to make the foreground conifers. But for background, I've got some bottle brush as well. These, let's see, those pine trees stuck up there, those are bottle brush pine trees. And they don't look as good now that they're cut out in the open, but you know, when I fill all those gaps and get enough trees planted there against them, they look pretty good at a distance. So we're interested in what you guys are interested in. You know, the next things coming up for us are complete the structures that I've got a structure to complete. I'm really close to being finished on anyway. Raph, how far along are you? Are you finished with your match that laser art structure?
Pretty well. I just have to connect the lights. They're in. Pretty much done. And of course the hot dog stand. Yeah.
Got to make sure that ends up on the layout and finished. So.
There you go. That's looking good, bro.
Oh man, absolutely.
Steve Structures had a comment. Back up just a little bit. There you go. Now it's focusing. Big Andy's weenies. With the seagulls.
And there's a pigeon
up
up. Yeah, seagulls on top. Yep, and pigeons.
Yeah, Stu Structure's got a comment. I think all things that are visual on the layout need to be fine scale and should be included in the content of the show.
Thank you. That was our thoughts and philosophies as well. I mean, everything falls as fine scale. I mean, typically, craftsman, fine scale, whatever term you associate with it, typically means you're talking about structure modeling. And while that is absolutely applicable, it's not the only thing. You know, it all qualifies. The definition of fine scale in my mind is just the quality that you seek to attain. So, we are going to get to some styrene structures. That'll be coming on some upcoming shows. I look forward to doing some paper modeling. I'm fascinated with mixed media in general. You know, the right tool for the right job, whether that's brass or laser cut, laser etched brass. I don't know if they're laser etched or not, but etched brass fire escapes. That's the right material for that job, or window treatments. But paper is a great building material, so I look forward to doing some, a wide range of various techniques and building materials. But I wanted to break away, kind of open the show up a little bit beyond just being a structure show, touch on some of the things that I've been playing with in the last, however long, in the last year or so, with various scenery materials that were beyond ground foam, and some of the other materials out there, even beyond static grass. I really appreciate Ralph and Miles going down this rabbit hole with me on talking scenery tonight, getting away from structures for a single show. But we've got a lot of stuff in the pipeline for you guys. I'm sure scenery will be something we'll come back to. I'd like, trees, you could dedicate multiple shows, or you could surely dedicate an entire show just to doing deciduous trees. I use 5 or 6 different methods for making trees, but I'm really fond of the sagebrush technique myself. So I'm really glad you guys come along with us for the ride tonight. Of course, thanks to Miles. Thank you, Miles, who had to drop off. Of course, it's getting late for him in his neck of the woods. And thank you, Ralph, as always, for hanging tight with us, brother. Johnny, for pulling this mess together, as always.
You're welcome.
We'll see you guys back next month. Johnny, if you can take us out, sir.
All righty. I want to say thank you to everybody over in the chat. Scott popped in for a few minutes there. We hadn't seen him for a while. He's had I think a few medical surgeries done, so had him out for a little bit, but it looks like he might be coming back. Yeah, like Andy said, I want to thank Ralph. Appreciate you being in here, and Miles was here earlier, and Andy, thank you for the show, and we wish Barry well on his new family and all. So go to YouTubeMallBuilders.com. There you can check schedules for the shows, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the once a month Saturday show. Tuesday and Wednesday shows are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern time. The Thursday and the Saturday show is at 9 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern time. I think I took the wrong pills today. I'm getting everything backwards. But, and also click on the e-magazine and be sure to sign up for a email notification when the e-mag comes out. JD and his team do a great job on that. And everybody knows JD and his team put it out pretty much on a regular basis, same time, same channel, every other month. But this month the crew's on vacation, so it will be a few days late, not much, but just a few. I mean, everybody needs a vacation from time to time, so it will be a little bit late this month, but not much. So just be patient. It will arrive in the mailbox, I guarantee it. So I want to say thank you to everybody for coming in tonight. We got the Thursday show coming up this week. Let's see, where am I at? Yeah, we also got the Saturday live show coming up this coming Saturday. with Barry and Big Bill, because Barry is going to stay with the live show. He said that he'll try. He's going to make time for that, so he's going to be there attacking and supporting Big Bill on his show. Bill's going to have another good show this month, so be sure to tune in for that. So we shall see you Thursday night. That'll be 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern time for the Slightly Controlled Chaos show. So y'all have a good night. We'll see you then. Bye.